Hello and welcome to the Enquiry Podcast. My name is Nerida Mills. I am your host, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you along for this episode. What we do in the Enquiry Podcast is really explore and inquire with experts in their field in regards to what it is that actually creates a human experience, and more importantly, what it is that we can use to influence the human experience for our own development, growth, and expansion. So welcome along. Let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Enquiry Podcast. I am very, very excited to have Carmen Braidwood with us today, sharing her story and some of the gold nuggets that she's got after years and years of experience in the media. So thank you for joining us today, Carmen, and I would love for you to start by just sharing a little bit about your background, your story. Who are you, for those of the audience who may have been living under a rock for the last 20 odd years, but give us a little bit of context.
Oh, well, hi, Nerida. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'd say you might not have been living under a rock if you haven't heard my name before. The large part of my media career has been in my home city of Perth. I'm a kid from the Perth Hills who was driving to uni one day, had a bit of a thing for performance. I was pretty good at acting and singing and thought, how am I going to channel that into my career? And while I was driving to uni, I heard an ad for the Perth Radio Academy. I auditioned for the Radio Academy and I embarked on a radio career. That took in things like broadcast journalism. I went off to country Victoria, worked on a breakfast radio show that was networked around country towns there. Then I came back to Perth for a bit and worked producing breakfast radio shows. Always done breakfast radio shows, actually. That was where I spent most of my time. Yeah. And then, skipped around the country, did a little bit of TV here and there. And today I find myself as a freelancer, but mostly a media trainer. I work with individuals and organisations who need to speak better on camera or on air or anywhere, really.
Yeah, which I imagine there would be a lot of, because we're so media dependent in a lot of respects now. But of course, there isn't any formal training outside of, private people like yourself to really be able to support that very well.
Yeah, media really encompasses so much. And I used to do this thing where I'd talk about new media, which is, digital, online, social media, and traditional media, which is your television, your radio, and your print. But the reality is that every company is a media company, and the gamut of traditional, new, digital media, it's all the same. We're all creating content for those platforms. And there are a few ways you can do that. You can do that as a person who speaks. You can present to camera, you can host a podcast like you're doing here, you can write a book, you can stand on stage and take a video of that and share it through your socials. All of those things are media. And that distinction, I think, is less and less necessary. At the end of the day, there's a new generation coming through. If you say to them, what's media? They say YouTube, and that's their understanding. Where did you get the news from last night? TikTok, right? So that's media now, and we need to make content for it. And I think any media professional or professional these days worth their salt needs to have a good understanding of media and how to approach that with a good degree of media literacy, a good degree of critical thinking, and a good degree of self-protection as well, and appreciate that, there's reputations at stake, appreciate that there's great opportunities if you have a growth mindset and approach it in a positive way. Appreciate that, like any other industry, it's going to be heavily affected by changes in technology. So we've seen the change that the internet impacted on the media, 20 to 30 years ago. And now that's happening all over again with AI. And we need to be really mindful of the impacts that has on all these other parts of the economy.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like when I first got into business, and I think a lot of people do this. We get into business because we love what we do and we want to do that, right? And one of the things that I didn't realize is how much training I was going to have to go through in order to be able to actually reach the people that I wanted to be able to help. And so since starting my business, I would say I've spent equal amounts of money, time, effort, energy, tears, all of the things on learning marketing just as much as I have of upskilling myself in my actual skill set. It's quite, it's a full-time job just doing that. So having those, that awareness around how to be the most effective with that time output, I think is extremely powerful for anybody in business.
Yeah.
What do you love about media?
25 years down the track, isn't it? Like, is it still the same? I think it started for me as being that description of being a kid who was interested in pushing herself outside of her comfort zone to try and challenge herself to do things that most people told her she couldn't do. I'm a natural introvert, would you believe? And I really did find myself drawn to things like singing and acting and performing on stages, because for me that was a challenge that I wanted to overcome. I wanted to be good at that, so I dedicated myself to that. And then I approached my media career the same way. It was really about challenging myself to do something I didn't think I could do. Later on, with a probably more mature head, I'd say the things that I really love about media kind of scare me as well.
Yeah.
The opportunity of media, the opportunity now for anybody to have a voice is so great. And we need to treat that with an amazing amount of respect, but I also see how wonderful that has been. It's given us this incredible diversity of thought. It's given us access to all kinds of diverse ideas. And as you can hear, there's the undercurrent that we need to be really mindful about how we consume this media, the pace with which it can be created. There's so many considerations around the accuracy, around misinformation. So that excites me, but it also concerns me. And I guess my solution for that, my antidote for that, is to be a person who's trained, be a person who's across the latest technologies. Don't stick your head in the sand, get across it, understand how you can leverage it to achieve what you want to achieve, to have your voice heard, to share your story, to build community. That's, when I go back to what I learned to love about radio, that was what I loved about listening to radio shows as I grew up. And I think that's why I went on and worked on radio shows, is they were able to form this connection, this very connected community. It was one of the last examples of true monoculture, where everyone in your area was turning on to the same radio station and hearing the same funny thing or the same story. I remember producing radio shows here in Perth where, a horse, I don't know, was riding along the foreshore during the fireworks and got scared, and we put that story to air as it happened. Yep. I love the immediacy with which information can be shared, and that has only been amplified with the advent of social media, and that genuinely excites me.
Yeah. And where do you see media going? I mean, you kind of alluded to, the introduction of AI and how that's having an impact. Where do you see it, like being in the industry for so long? What do you see coming that probably most other people don't?
Yeah. To me, it's the return to personality-driven content. The thing that we tuned into radio stations and television stations for was companionship. And people still do. Where there are, and there are not many left, but where there are still 24-hour radio stations, you have older people who go to that radio station to find a voice to listen to and connect with during the night so they don't feel so lonely. And my lovely friend Simone Heng has written an incredible book around loneliness and how that is the true pandemic that's affected the world, right? And continues to. And to me, the ultimate antidote to loneliness is connection. It's other people. It's forming those bonds. And we can do that using this beautiful, immediate kind of content. And we can still do that, even though the talkback radio stations, don't have the budgets anymore to give us that continual live local content. People are finding local communities online. Absolutely. Facebook groups are more popular than they've ever been again. They're back because that's the place where you can hang out and connect with people literally in your area and get to know them. And then you've got kids who have, rare illnesses and rare conditions, who are connecting with other people who look like them and have an experience of the world that is the same as theirs, and they don't feel lonely anymore. And I just froth over that. So I believe the future of this media is that people with genuine stories, honesty, transparency are going to adopt the accessibility that they have. They're going to become content creators. They're going to share. They're going to connect with other people. It's not a one-way street anymore. It is a two-way street. It's not broadcasting. It's even more, it's narrow, it's connected, and AI will never, ever replace that. There'll be things that'll be expedited. The process will be quicker. AI will allow us to do that, but I wholeheartedly believe that the human element is only going to get stronger and stronger and more visible.
Yeah, I have the same sense, especially like, I dabble in events as well. And, as much as we love the convenience of online processes, online courses, online access, what I see is a deep desire for people to actually get face to face again, to come back into a place where I can actually like touch you as a physical human being, obviously like in appropriate ways, but like be in that same space with people. And I couldn't agree with you more around the loneliness epidemic. I think it's really full on.
Yeah.
So I know, if you're okay to switch gears for a minute, I know, you've been through quite a health journey over the years, and a relatively public one, right? Being in the media, being in the public eye. Could you share a little bit about that journey with us?
Yeah, it's always the same, and I'm sure this comes up when you talk with other people in your community about health and your own health journeys.
Yeah.
Where do you start? Okay, mine is a chronic health journey. So anyone who lives with chronic illness knows that it's always on. It doesn't end. The illnesses rear their head whether they're treated or not, and I have to say that even today, I'm in the midst of it. I'm coming off of a few weeks of not being terribly well, of reconnecting with both traditional and modern practices to help me, and occasionally coming up frustrated. But to fill you in on the specifics of that, age 14, a bit overweight, hadn't had any kind of developmental changes to my body, goiter in my throat, and I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the very common experience. Every time I mention that in a room full of women, about half of them will go, oh yeah, I've got that, or I had that after pregnancy. Then I went and attempted to start a family when I married my husband at about 35, and discovered that somewhere along the lines I had gone through what we now know is just an early menopause, right? So no ovarian function, autoimmune again. Yeah. And that was probably when we should have done a little more research. I was all for it. I was extremely motivated health-wise, and I considered myself a pretty health-focused person because I worked in such a busy career. I really prioritized looking after my health. And I probably also was managing some pretty severe self-image issues, and, used to train like mad and barely eat anything, as is the want of women in the media. But I had all the symptoms of a very rare illness that I Googled one day, only to have a GP explain to me that it is so rare that only 2,500 people in all of Australia are diagnosed with that. He also pointed out that the symptoms are kind of cool, and wouldn't I want to keep them, because one of the symptoms is to be underweight. Another symptom is to be tanned all the time, whether you get sun exposure or not.
Interesting.
And he said,
looking at the barrel of a chronic illness.
Yeah, isn't it? That's right. Says you don't mind being tanned and skinny, do you? I said, well, of course not. I'm a travel television presenter. It really suited my motto I was after. But yeah, before too long, I developed these black red wine-like stains on my lips and cheeks, and high pigmentation in all the creases in my fingers. And I was craving salt. My husband could sit there and eat a block of chocolate in front of me and I wouldn't want to touch it. I just only wanted salt. And I ticked all of these boxes off for this rare condition, Addison's disease.
Mm.
So that is the autoimmune dysfunction, complete dysfunction of the adrenal glands.
Right.
So we're not talking about adrenal fatigue, we're talking about adrenal insufficiency. And this is a deadly condition. I didn't really understand that at the time, especially considering I'd had a GP just kind of explain it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then even when I was diagnosed, my endocrinologist had never treated someone with Addison's disease before. They weren't entirely convinced that it was a thing. And so by then, I don't know if I'm getting this across enough, but I had, had been dealing with the fact that I wasn't going to become a mother because I had zero ovarian function. I was dealing with the fact that I'd been, basically mansplained away from my very correct diagnosis. And I'd had this endocrinologist tell me it's not that serious. And so I didn't take the medication. I embarked on a journey of eating nothing but vegetables and fish and hoping that I'd get pregnant, and I was going to return my body to homeostasis and get pregnant. And about 6 months later, I woke up in the Royal Perth ICU. I'd been in a coma for several days, and that is because my entire body had shut down and I'd gone into adrenal crisis. So adrenal crisis is, curtains kind of territory.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky. This is the dance I go between with, medicine and traditional alternatives, is that, medicine saved me. They were able to, at Royal Perth, with the help of an extremely experienced head of endocrinology, David Hurley, who no longer practices, he figured out that I was untreated for my Addison's disease and put me on intravenous sodium to return my sodium levels to a safe place. I was very nearly murdered in the ICU by incompetent staff who tried to do things like push a feeding tube 7 centimetres further down my throat, even though my husband had told them it had already been done, and because it wasn't written up on the form.
Wow.
So I've got extreme distrust as a result of experiences like that. I was also given medication for DVT, which contains a whole bunch of sodium that sent my sodium levels up way too quickly. And if it wasn't for my husband being in that room who said, hey, how come she's been given this? Dr. Hurley said not to give her that. They had to quickly flush my body. The least safe you can be in a hospital, in my opinion, is in ICU. And I'm so glad that I made it out of there. But it's been a journey. And as you hear, I'm still on it. I'm still wrestling with trying to get those energy levels back and with how to get the medications right. Because as you're hearing, 3 autoimmune illnesses, 3 sets of hormones that aren't being produced by my body. That means 3 sets of medication I should be taking, and I'm just working through how much of each of those to take and wrestling with the crashes that invariably come after I have extremely energetic days. It's all over the place.
Yeah. It's really full on, and it's interesting. I mean, I think I'm in a similar situation, I guess, where ICU has both saved my life and also nearly taken it.
That's right. It's hard, isn't it? You're so grateful, and and so as a result, I just live in this kind of. And how do you feel this way? I just had a power cord just fall off the desk, so the lights turned off on the video.
Okay.
I think the light's correcting. Okay, maybe that's the universe stepping in. But that's it. I don't know if you dance between this. Like, you really do. I credit the ICU with saving my life and Dr. Hurley. But on the flip side, I'm so scared of having to go back there.
I have a lot of fear of dealing with doctors because I have been dismissed, downplayed, yelled at, told that it was all in my head more times than anybody I think ever should. And I think just after a while that really wears down on you, and it really degrades the trust in the system. However, credit where credit's due. Acute treatment, fantastic. Chronic health issues, less so. And that's where I lean into natural medicine now, and I'm very, very selective. I have one doctor who I trust to give me honest feedback and actually say, okay, this is something probably to be mindful of, or no, it's okay, whatever. But
I think that's a really good approach.
Yeah.
And I'll add to that the trust thing, it's not just losing trust in the people around you. It's for the last 5 years I've really wrestled with trusting myself because
Yeah.
I made those crummy decisions at the end of the day. But all I was trying to do was be true to myself. And so there's been a journey towards restoring self-trust.
Yes.
And also having the self-trust it takes to stand up and say, thank you for your advice. I'm going to choose to do something a little bit different because so far all you're giving me is advice to handle, like you say, those acute circumstances. And I'm dealing with a chronic circumstance, which surely there has to be something else. I can't believe that we're still at this stage with it. Well, at the end of the day, medicine, which is only medicine, there's only a medical solution. And I guess it's in the name, isn't it? We have to realize that if you're looking for lifestyle support or, the margins, just something to give you that 1% better quality of life, you're probably not going to find it in a doctor's office.
Yeah.
As much as we do still need them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is that dance, right? Of like, I appreciate where the benefit is there. And if I want to go beyond that symptom-based treatment, then I'm going to have to look in other areas. I know for myself, that literally drove me into some of the training that I've done and everything to understand why my body does certain things and where is that, where are the emotional hooks and things like that. Where's the spiritual path in it, or like what is it forcing upon me, is a question that I always ask, is sort of like, what is this forcing me to embrace or to accept or to adopt or to let go? And I find that to be quite useful. I'm not sure if you've looked into it yet, but because I have 3 autoimmune conditions also, much less impactful, thankfully, touch wood. However, they all came as a result of Lyme's disease, which was a lot more impactful, but that's kind of settled down now. And I was looking at stem cell therapy as far as the autoimmune condition is concerned. Have you looked into that? And
not yet. I mean, as recently as today, my husband and I were having a conversation about fecal transplants. This is what it does to you. You start going, I'm going to investigate everything. And every conversation, I don't have to tell you this, I guess, nor your listener, every conversation starts to include, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Low dose naltrexone. Have you done that? Like there's something, and I'm open to hearing about stem cell therapy. Let's hear it. What's the latest? How can it help us?
From my understanding, stem cell therapy can correct autoimmune conditions. So the challenge, and I met a lady, it would have been, like 12 years ago now, actually. And I met her at a networking event in Perth and got talking to her, obviously, because I have the alopecia. It's one of the only visual kind of indicators of an autoimmune condition, so it does get people talking. And she was sharing with me that she had recovered from multiple sclerosis. She mentioned that, she had actually spent 7 years in a wheelchair, and it was getting to the point where, she was just becoming more and more bedridden, more and more isolated, more and more detached from any form of functionality. And so they were quite desperate. And she went, you know what? Fuck it, I'm going to give it a try. And went to, I believe she got treatment in Japan from memory. Japan, got treatment, and she said within a couple of days she was walking. She was running a cafe in the inner city of Perth when I met her. So, hospitality, she's on her feet constantly, and so that planted the seed for me. That conversation planted the seed for me that it was a possibility. And then when I was looking at, once we finally got the diagnosis of Lyme's and stuff, and we were looking at treatment pathways, I did reach out to a couple of stem cell therapy companies, and they all said that it wouldn't cure the Lyme's. It's not going to get rid of the bacteria, but it would correct autoimmune conditions. So then the next step for me was looking at, okay, well, finding, and I think this is probably the challenge at the moment based on the fact that stem cell therapy to this degree is not available in Australia as of yet, is trying to find a company that is going to be morally, ethically on par, because they are getting, obviously, umbilical cord stem cells, and making sure that obviously the women are being compensated well, that, nothing untoward is happening there. And that side of things is, and obviously the monetary investment, those are the two things that are holding me back at this stage from going and doing the thing. But it's certainly a pathway that I'll be exploring as soon as humanly possible. But it is probably going to be another $10,000, 12.
Oh, yeah. And that's the other thing, right? I'm so big on accessibility, and I'm so grateful for an accessible public health system. However, alternatives are not that accessible. Alternatives like my noisy puppy dog in the background, that's the hard bit, isn't it? It's another great cost. It's the uncertainty, and and just even the freedom to spitball these ideas. And my background being in broadcast media, that was never a place where I could really safely share what actually happened to me, without fear of retribution. And look, maybe sometimes I was too honest about the things that I endured, because I don't work full time in that space anymore. And it's a really scary place. Sorry about my dog. She's my baby. So if you're ever wondering about how the fertility thing turned out, I'm a stepmother, an incredible 23-year-old young man, and I have my baby Piper, the red poodle, and she's as needy as you might expect poodles to be. Here, Piper, come say good day.
Look at her ears.
I know. She just had a haircut and she's super fluffy. She's very she's got her summer haircut. And,
yes.
She's a lot more teddy bear-like when she has her long hair. But right now she's a stick figure.
Have a Pomeranian cross Cavalier. And she's getting old. So she's like 12. Yeah. 13 now, and this time of year, every year we now have to shave her because she's just not handling the heat anymore. And it's the funniest thing in the world when we shave her. She just looks so funny.
But I love it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, obviously through that journey, you kind of alluded to it then, it's sort of like, and I guess I've experienced this myself as well, of that line of like how much to share. What is me sharing that is of value to me and others, and what is me sharing that is like playing down some victim story or adding weight to the actual situation. Have you experienced a dance with that?
Yeah, absolutely. My general answer to this is that it's contextual, right? There are places where my chronic health journey needs to be shared for people to understand what I'm there to teach them. So I'm a speaker as well as I'm a media trainer, and I speak about having radical self-trust. I speak about having had to learn compassionate self-leadership. And those two pillars provide people with strategies that they can employ in their own lives to live better lives. And for some of that, you do need to know some of that chronic health story. You and I, and me knowing, what your background is and the kinds of conversations you have in this podcast, I felt like sharing as much as I shared there was important. And I also intentionally chose to be incredibly vulnerable with you and admit that, to be honest, if I was doing a different kind of interview, I probably wouldn't have told that story because it might have made me too emotional to get through it, right? There are days when it's tickety-boo and there are days when it's just not, right? Yeah. And my advice to clients is always that. And this is not my concept. I think every speaker is probably given the similar kind of advice. You speak from healed scars. You don't speak from open wounds. And when I've gone there in that open wound state, you're not actually bringing value to your audience necessarily. Instead, you're kind of doing a bit of trauma porn is what I've called it in the past.
I like
just
that. That's funny.
Yeah, isn't it? It's funny. And that's a funny way to think about it, right? And that's when you're probably making it more about you than your audience member, and really thinking about the value. And I felt like this safe place, your podcast and your audience, and what I'd researched about your audience and yourself through our conversations, it was a safe place to share some really detailed parts of that story.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I would say that there are generally, business scenarios and traditional media scenarios where a sanitized version of that story comes out. And that's probably more along the lines of, I live with chronic illnesses that require management daily, and it changes the way I work and lead myself. So I've had to adopt radical self-trust by doing this, and this. I've learned compassionate self-leadership by doing this, and this. And then I make it more about my audience very quickly. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more around compassionate self-leadership? What does that mean to you?
To me, it's the antidote. I've used that word a few times today. It's the shadow side of myself is that there's not been a place of great self-love, and that would be where the wounds come up for me. And we all have our moments and reasons why that's occurred, but I know that somewhere along the line, I stopped treating myself with compassion. I think it's related to perfectionism. I think it's related to fears of not being good enough. I think it's related to genuine moments where the world told you, you're not good enough. And it's a form of resilience, and this is the funny thing about compassionate self-leadership. I've had feedback on it being a keynote topic that organizations won't be interested in because their staff are going to call in sick all the time. And yet,
Interesting.
I know, right?
Get out of jail free card where, that's the fear, I think, around compassion and self-compassion. If I'm nice to myself, I'm not going to show up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to take it too far. And I'd say, but we are in a country where we did have to legislate that it'd be okay for you to ring in sick and to not be contacted outside of work hours, So we're workaholics in Australia, and I'd say in the Western world.
Yeah.
And we need, and particularly in places of work where safety is an issue, we need to create a psychologically safe environment where your workers are going to say, hey, you know what? I'm not fit to work today. Instead of, I need the money, I'm just going to pretend and come in and half-ass it and not report when this terrible thing is about to happen. That's how tragic accidents happen. That's how overworked nurses do the wrong thing in ICU.
Yeah.
That's how doctors forget to write something down on someone's chart in ICU because they haven't recognized that their self-leadership requires a degree of compassion for themselves that is to the benefit of everyone else around them. And as soon as you discount yourself, you are risking everyone else around you.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I love that. Yeah. Very, very cool. It's so interesting, isn't it, that the body through challenge, essentially, whatever flavor of challenge that is, but the body through the challenge always leads us into that self-compassion. Coming back to what I was saying before, where is it forcing me? I feel like chronic illness really does force that self-compassion.
Yeah.
It makes us be understanding to ourselves and actually give ourselves a bit of a break. So
yeah, you're right. And that's part of the dance. The dance has been a theme of today's conversation too, isn't it? That I'm so conditioned, like so many other people, to feel like I am indispensable and I have to show up and my worth is defined by my showing up. Whereas realistically, if I can't do the job one day, I can't turn up and speak at an event, or I can't MC someone's event, or I can't turn up and do their media training, I have such wonderful community. I have so many incredible people around me. I could call probably 30 alternatives and they would all be amazing, if not better at that thing than I was going to be. And today, the trust side of it has been restored in me so much that I pick up that phone every time and I make that call. Yeah, and it's I'm not here to say the little monkey mind doesn't kick in occasionally, but when I'm practicing these things, it's easier and easier to do.
Yeah, and I actually just love, and I want to highlight the fact that you said that. It's not that the monkey mind doesn't kick in, right? Because I think some people have this perception of well, until I don't have that monkey mind kicking in, I'm not there yet, or I haven't done enough yet. And it's it's then used as another reason to beat ourselves down. And where in fact, it's that's part of the human experience. That's part of the journey. It's part of the path. It's not, I don't think that it's actually possible to turn that off completely because it's just the way that the brain works. So, I love that you highlighted that. Even, somebody who's playing a game at the level at which you're playing at, which, let's be honest, you're not playing a mediocre game, you're playing a big game. Even someone like you who has all of these issues going on recognizes that self-compassion is first, and also that you're going to do the dance of being onto that and being in it and then not, and then being in it and then not, and then being in it and then not, like this is a very normal experience. So
Isn't it?
thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah. So I'd love to just I guess circle, kind of bringing it all together. If you've got one message to share with the world, what is that message for you, based on all of your experiences, both in the media and also with your own health journey, and with it, I'm sure you've got a plethora of other experiences to draw from as well. But what is that one line for you, or one message for you?
It's got to be self. It's all coming back to self. Your relationship with yourself, and this is always a hard question to answer, so thank you for posing. But yeah, the common theme universally has come through both my career, and let's call it high visibility careers. If you're a person who needs to be visible for your business, like you've talked about doing, or if you've got suddenly the CEO job, or you're in line for that next big job, or you just want to do something you've never done before, right? It's going to require you to make that first move. And that relationship with self is the most important thing. And yes, the work isn't ever kind of done. You need to be laying the foundations and doing the groundwork that's going to get you through that next inevitable tough time. So one practical thing I love to talk about when I'm speaking about radical self-trust is finding ways to believe your own good press. We've all got great stories out there that other people are telling about us. You might not hear them that often, because let's face it, you don't pick up the phone and call Telstra and go, hey, well done, consistent 5G. I just rang to give you a pat on the back. That just never happens.
Yeah.
We don't hear the positive stuff all that often. We tend to only get the negative stuff. So save those examples of positive press, that little email that someone said, or the text message, and put them in a folder of good press on your email, and just know that that is there to get you through those days, to remind you that you are good at what you do, and to cultivate that really positive relationship with yourself. And I guess that also speaks to, from the media career or the business side of what you do, it speaks then to compassion, right? It's very, very hard to genuinely feel compassion for a person that you can't connect with, and you can't find yourself genuinely loving, and if that's coming up for you, then go do the work to fix it. Your partner's not responsible for your happiness. My dog Piper's not responsible for my happiness. They're people and things that contribute to it. My career is not responsible for my happiness. I am responsible for my happiness. And, doing the things it takes to support that. It's not all on your own, I like to say, to sort of allude back to my radio career, everyone needs a co-host, everyone needs a community. Sometimes you're going to need to draw on that and do the things that make you feel a bit uncomfortable. For me as an introverted person, I know you might be surprised to hear that, but that genuinely is my natural state of being these days. I have to continually remind myself that I feel better for having conversations like the one you and I are having today. I feel better for picking up the phone and calling somebody. I feel better for leaving the house and going for a swim like I did this morning. So keep that relationship and that self-leadership very, very strong before everything else.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's a very, like the way that you're relating to yourself, from what I'm hearing, is a very conscious creation of the relationship. It's like, this is how I want to experience myself, and these are the things that I know are going to cultivate that experience.
Yeah.
Rather than just kind of leaving it up to, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe there is a degree of wanting to wrestle back some sense of control. There's a lot of us who have that controlling tendency because you want to protect yourself, and you're kind of listening to that internal voice that's protecting you. The concerned parent is what I like to call that. Yeah, so I guess it's a way of dressing self-compassion up in some really nice, easy to do things that give you this actionable strategy.
Yeah.
And so from my point of view, things need to be simple and actionable for you to want to do them all. Simple and memorable. You don't want to be sitting in the deepest, darkest depths and not able to call on it in some way. That I think we've always got a greater chance of implementing anything if it's easy.
Absolutely. I have two more questions for you. The second last one is a professional question. The last one is a personal question. So from a professional standpoint, for the people who are listening now, given your expertise and your knowledge around the media, most of my listeners are probably more on the small business kind of front, people who are wanting to start a business. So what advice would you give them around where their focus should be in media and how to access kind of those more efficient pathways?
It's got to come easy. It's got to be something you actually like doing. If you start a podcast, you're going to want to enjoy the physical process of it. And if you can, do a little bit of research first about the various ways you can promote yourself and really make sure that it's grounded in your reality. One thing that I did is I had this expectation on me that because I came from radio, that I should promote myself using a podcast. And I learned pretty quickly that it just wasn't really my jam. I didn't really enjoy the process as much as I used to enjoy going into a radio show every day, because podcasting for me felt quite solitary. Whereas when I was on a radio show, I was part of a team of like 10 people and it was exciting. We were talking to people all around the world and 10 to 30 different stories a day. Whereas podcasting was like, right, we're going to deep dive into this one topic and I'm going to talk to one person. I'm going to do all my research myself. I'm going to edit the whole thing myself. And for me, that didn't speak to what I needed. It wasn't, even though, it wasn't giving me energy, right? So I needed to find more energetic ways for me to do it. And for me, the more energizing thing is to go on someone else's podcast and let them do all the thinking and respond to your questions, and then I love it. I love connecting with other people in this way. So for yourself, if you're thinking, right, what's going to be my tactic to build visibility, and you must have visibility in business, right? Find the one that really works for you. My friend Amy Jacobson, an emotional intelligence expert, likes to say there is no blueprint, and I keep it written in front of me. Use your best strategy. Don't feel like just because someone says you should do this, that you have to do it that way. There'll be a strategy that really works for you, and that will be the one that just flows out of you.
Yeah, I like that. No one size fits all approach. Find something that works for you. That's really, really cool. Okay, and last question. And this is one that I close out all of my podcasts with. So one of the things, I 100% agree around the loneliness epidemic. And I think that part of what closes the gap around that sense of loneliness is allowing ourselves to be seen, actually.
Yeah.
And, being in a position of high visibility, I imagine there would have been a little bit of a journey, a little bit of a story around the different layers that have been allowed to come out in different areas in your life, both personally and professionally. And I was wondering if you could speak into that, like what has that journey been like for you in order for you to allow yourself to be seen to the degree at which you do today?
Yeah, it's absolutely been by experiencing it. We do learn by doing, and it sometimes feels incredibly uncomfortable. Sometimes the sign you're on the right track is the discomfort, and that has created in me an understanding that when I'm thinking, ooh, alarm bells, maybe I overdid it there, that's when I'm rewarded with the most connection, with the most aligned people and experiences. It's not when I copy my great friend Hartney Anderson, who the two of us, were competitors on radio, and I go, I'm going to start a PR firm, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's our backgrounds are totally different, and we're totally different people. And to bring it back to the personal, there were times when I shared personal stories that left me with a full Brene Brown vulnerability hangover, like just, I didn't know what a vulnerability hangover was 20 years ago when I first started in radio, but, I remember hearing myself back or not nailing what I'd prepared, and then suddenly exposing myself, and feeling like I was just this utter fraud. And there was probably imposter syndrome there, and just thinking, God, I'm going to be caught out and this hurts, right? But every time, the promos that they made to sell the show to the rest of the state, right? The show got picked up by the whole state. That's a pretty big deal back then in radio. Then we won an award for the best network show and got sent off to America on a scholarship, it was because they picked the moments that I thought were the worst, that were the cringiest, that were the most embarrassing. They put those out there. They didn't find the bits that I sounded like. It was relatable. This is it, like choosing really carefully, not bombarding, not doing it for trauma porn reasons, just getting to a place where you're feeling comfortable enough to be okay with the discomfort and go to a place that is so uniquely you that literally nobody else could do that thing. That's what you're here for. It's to just, you're already there. I really subscribe to things like, finding your higher self is not going somewhere else. It's just returning back to what you had when you got here. It's already in you. It's your own secret sauce. The more you can do to put yourself in a place of mental and physical well-being so that you can sit there and be comfortable in a place of discomfort, the more you're going to find connection. And the more you're going to prosper, and the more the good things around you, the energetics kicks in, all that stuff. It just works. It just works. You can't explain it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your incredible journey, your story, your wisdom with us. How can people follow you, get in touch with you, learn more about what it is that you do?
You probably jump onto any search engine these days, AI generated or SEO, and search Carmen Braidwood Media, and you'll connect with me. I believe I'm the only Carmen Braidwood in the whole world. That is my website. I hang out a lot on LinkedIn. I also like to hang out in the chats on Instagram. And I mentioned podcasting. Sometimes I podcast, but for the most part, I'm making short videos, sharing observations on the internet. And if you want to, dive into any of the stuff that I've started to talk about today, then you'll find it all in those places.
Amazing. Thank you so much again. Very much appreciate you.
Thanks.
Okay, that is it from us for today for the Enquiry Podcast. All of the links that you're going to want to find is going to be underneath this episode. So jump along and make sure that you're following the people who do join us for the Enquiry Podcast. I'm sure you'll agree they are absolutely phenomenal, and it is my absolute pleasure to be able to have them come in and share their wisdom with everybody. If you're wanting to know what I'm up to, jump onto my website, neridamills.com, and you can check out all of my opportunities to get involved, be they free things or programs or events. You can always come along and say hi. I would love to see you.